Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online, and we have the release date for the Citadel expansion. It should be April 27th if everything goes right, and everything is being deployed on CC as well, which means that we'll get to do quite a bit of testing. We get to make our calculations, check stuff out, see if we enjoy the capital changes, all of that good stuff. So there's a lot of work to be done. One thing to always keep in mind, of course, is that when stuff is on CC, it is subject to change, but I think that we will get a pretty good idea of what we can expect if we start all of that testing. Of course, we are here for the market, and you may have noticed it already, but the biggest mover on my ticker is actually plex. So that is definitely unexpected in my book. Let's get started with that one, 55 seconds. And we'll jump right in with some plexes starting to come in on the sell order side at 1,030,000,000. That's really a lot lower than last week. The buyers are still just above a billion, but we are playing with that. So take a look at this chart. Really a pretty big correction happening at the moment. We definitely broke the previous bottoms of 1.12 billion, somewhere around that. And yeah, there's apparently no breaks on the downfall here of the plex prices, which honestly it's not good because I invested in a lot of plex and I have them lying around, but it is really good for people that are looking to plex their accounts. A billion compared to 1.25 billion is yeah, quite a bit more affordable. I'm not sure what's happening with the exact reason for this. A possibility is that a lot of people need to be preparing and buying for their citadels, and so that they are actually dumping their stocks at the moment. But it is a little bit strange to see us still going from like 1.2 billion all the way down to close to a billion pretty soon if this keeps happening. So here we can see one data point at 1.02 billion. That's completely unexpected, but this is obviously something we have to keep an eye on, because this has some serious momentum behind it. And personally, if you're looking to invest in plex, I think this could be a really good time to do so. We have seen plex be able to touch almost 1.3 billion. Now you can buy them like 300 million, less than that. We're closing in on a billion. Anything below that, I think, could become automatic purchases by some players, but it could be that something really fundamental is happening as well, and so that plex could correct even further back. But for my personal investment, that is not a good chart. For people looking to plex their accounts, this is, I think, a pretty damn interesting chart right here. If you have any idea of what's happening with plexes, then feel free to tell me so. But I think one person also put up a prediction a few EVE talks ago, and he said, at first he said maybe we could go as low as 800 million, then he revised it a little bit to, well, we'll probably get below a billion, and well, he's right on the money if we look at the trend here at the moment. And if this keeps up, we could go as low as 800 million. So if you have explanations, if you have any predictions when it comes to plex, then feel free to put those in the comments, because I'm sure that everyone would love to see some speculation from traders on this topic. For me personally, this is completely counter to my expectations. I thought plex would start to go up as we got closer to the Citadel expansion, and that's just not working out at the moment. But alright, we'll see how everything works out in the future. For now, plex are definitely declining in price rapidly. Here's the trading certificate following a pretty similar trend. Let's see what the sellers are at for this one. Very similar, 1,030,000,000 is what they're going for on the seller side. Buyers have gone below a billion, 940 million. So if that's a predictor for where plex are heading, that's definitely not good news. On the other hand, as I've said, being able to trade your alt for a month for less than a billion is, I think, a pretty good deal. And this could indeed be something that has to do with the skill injectors, with the alternative possibility of training your characters in a different manner. And thus we see this major decline here. If that is what's happening, then it could become quite a bit more problematic to keep plexes at a very high price. It's something I'll definitely need to look into. Next up here we get body resculpt, which is going up to 280 million, clearly completely different from plex and the training certificate. Here another explanation: if people can now finally train their alts using the skill injectors to the point they want them to, they can now also of course decide to make these alts look exactly the way they want them to as well, and thus that's why we may see more body resculpts happening at the moment. For the skill extractors though, well, the chart is not very visible. It's weird that these are still going down as well though. If we look at the chart and then the projection here, they are currently selling for 236 million, buyers at 231 million. That's very affordable. That is something that you can easily make in a week of very casually playing EVE Online. And then when it comes to a skill injector, these are going back up a little bit, so these definitely know quite some variation. Let's say that we started at 650 million, went down to 615, back up to 650, back down towards 610, and now we're on our way back up a little bit. They're currently selling for 642 million, the buyers are at 630 million. This is still pretty affordable though. I don't think one skill injector at 600 million gives you as much as what you would get for a month of training, so even 60% of a month, I don't think we're there. So I think at the moment, honestly, the multiple training pilot training certificate looks to me as the best value for your ISK when it comes to training, especially an alt. You know, you would probably have some decent implants on that one, and then I think the 1 billion here is probably your best bet compared to a skill injector that still costs 640 million. That's like 64% of that price. I don't think you get enough skill points, especially in the higher brackets. So it's really weird to me, actually looking at it from that perspective, that these are going down that drastically as well. We'll see what happens. Very interesting market here this week. Let's touch on the minerals next, 710. And let's see what we can see here. For titanium, the trend here is slightly up, but from last week we're slightly down. Still, we're hovering in basically the 610 to 620. God damn it, the new messaging is pretty cool as well. Cluster shutdown should be about an hour away, so I should still have plenty of time. So 610 to 620 is basically the price range for titanium, and they're currently selling at 613, buyers at 610. Supply wise, 500 million, 700 million, 800 million, yeah, quite a little bit. One big buyer of 2 billion units though is keeping everything in check. And so I would say titanium is looking pretty good to keep hovering within this range in the foreseeable future. Pretty stable. Here is the pyrite chart. If you don't look at this one dip here to 10.8 ISK, then 1110 as a trade range, somewhere around that seems to be very much possible. We're down just a little bit on the chart, but nothing too drastic. Currently selling at 1109 or 11.10 ISK, and the buyers are just below 11 ISK. Supply seems to be decently healthy. Half a front page with 360 million, 100 million and 100 million here. On the buyer side, 200 million, 100 million. So slight edge to the supply maybe, but I think it's looking good to stay between 11 and 11.2 ISK for now for pyrite. Mixalon then. Oh, well, that's pretty nice. Mixalon actually going up slightly. Trending above 62 ISK, that's interesting. Sellers are at 62.71, and even the buyers had to follow suit at 61.22. So Mixalon apparently a slight winner for the High-Sec materials here, but it's a very slow trend. We can see that for the 6-month chart, we basically have almost 5 months of slow decline from 70 to, let's say, 60 ISK, and then now we have a pretty slow increase in price from 60 ISK to maybe 62 ISK. Although it's a slight trend, it is very slow. Not something you could trade on, but something that as a miner you could decide to switch some production from, let's say, pyrite heavy sources to something with a bit more Mixalon or something like that. Next up, we've got some Isogen, which, well, is definitely on a declining phase in the last 6 months, but is trying to hold on around the 100 ISK mark. So let's say 95 to 105 ISK for now seems to be feasible. 99 ISK pretty much for the sellers, 97.75 for the buyers. And supply coming in, half a front page. Biggest orders are around 24-25 million units. The buyers, we've got 20 million units coming in here, another 11 here. So slight edge to the sellers, a bit of pressure on the price, but nothing that is going to, I think, initiate another serious downtrend at the moment. I think it's looking okay for most high-sec minerals, and the most interesting one is probably Mexalon, because that one is going up in price once again. And then the in-between one, that's what I'm calling Noxium here. The bottom of 470, even 465, 460, we're very close to that. Slight uptick to be seen at the tail end here. So currently selling for 474 ISK. The buyers are at 469. That's very low margin, but at a very low price for Noxium historically. On the chart, we're also at the point of basically the lowest points in the last 6 months or so. So Noxium, yeah, definitely not something you want to focus on too much unless you're making and creating stocks for like the longer term. I think at some point this should turn around, and then of course you could do really well with pretty big Noxium stocks, but that remains a pretty big gamble considering how badly it's been going for Noxium in the last 6 months, at least, even more than that, to be honest. Then we've got the nullsec ones. Let's start with Zydrine. Obviously the increase in price that happened up towards 1400 ISK could not be maintained, so we did go back down towards 1200, but that seems to be a floor where the market is hesitating. So currently the buyers are at 1170 ISK. New buy orders, 4 or 5 of them, including almost 5 million units. On the sellers, we've got a few new ones, including 4 million units here. So that seems to be pretty balanced. I would say 1200 as a price range could be possible, but considering the wild swings that we've seen here in these nullsec materials, I don't think it's impossible that there's some manipulation behind this as well, and so we could decline even further than that. But at the moment it's looking like Zydrine is going to try to maintain 1200 ISK as a price range. Let's see if Megasite has a similar chart. Exactly, so a pretty big decline towards 1000 ISK, went back up to 1350, and declined back a little bit after that increase in price, and is now trying to hold also at around 1200 ISK. So 1180 for the buyers, 1218, 1217 for the sellers. It's strange that Megasite and Zydrine are basically at the exact same price at the moment. So it used to be that Megasite was quite a bit more expensive than Zydrine, but it looks like the nullsec changes have basically made both of them so easy to get at the moment that, well, there's hardly any distinction anymore. If you're moving your Zydrine, you're probably moving just as much Megasite compared to the demand at the moment. So that again, to me, gives a slight indication that we might be talking some market manipulation as well, especially the uptick that we're seeing right here. So are we going to correct all the way back to the bottoms of close to 1000 ISK or even below that? Probably not. It may be that at this point suppliers are going to say, okay, we're gonna hold off enough to try and support the current price range. But if it does happen, then I would say you could try to build some stocks once again and try to ride that increase in price, because, well, 300 ISK on something that you buy for 1000, like 20, 30, and on Zydrine probably even more. Yeah, probably close to 40% in just a few months is obviously not a bad deal either. And then we'll touch on Morphite. Morphite is a bit different because it touches on Tech 2 production, but a lot of people do like it when I check it out. So on the 6 months, clearly a decline from 12,500 ISK to current price range, selling for 10,750, and then the buyers 10,461. So let's say that we lost 150 to 200. No, that's not exactly right. Let's say 2,000, almost 2,000 ISK lost, which would be 15 to 20% is where I would put the loss over the last 6 months. It's obviously not good, but I've always compared this one to Zydrine and Megasite because it also comes from very similar sources, and it's managed to hold on a lot better than Megasite and Zydrine did. So those lost 40-50% from their very highs that they had reached after the Nullsec ore rebalance happened. Morphite managed to hold on a lot better, and also if you look at it, we declined throughout October from 1250 to let's say 1120, and after that it's really been a very slow decline with Morphite trying to hold on really hard to its price range. So it was definitely not bad to have Morphite, especially if on the other hand you also had all of the other Nullsec minerals over this period of time. So this looks to me like it's a much more stable Nullsec minerals than all the other ones. It is of course also something you need in Tech 2 production, so the Tech 2 market is very important for this one as well. But for your consideration, as a store of value, I would say that this is probably better than Megasite and Zydrine, just because it's bound to be a bit more stable if the past is any indication. Next up, some Tech 1 ships. Let's see what we can spot here. 1605, and we'll start here with the Armageddon, which, well, did go above 214 million on the chart, now finally pulling back. Does that mean some supply is coming in? Yes, finally. Man, that's been a long time, but we actually have 2, 4, 6, 7 new sell orders of Armageddons. Doesn't look like much, but we were stuck at 3, 4, 5 orders for a very long time, and some of them 69, 30 and 98 of them. That's not bad. Selling for 212 million put some pressure on the price, and as I've said in the last EVE talk, it looks like the battleships are just not that popular at the moment, and for that reason there's just not that many of them available on the market. They're trading at a pretty high range, some of them, and they are susceptible to pretty wild swings, because buying up a few hundred Armageddons is not that big of an investment for some people to make. So it's good to see some extra Armageddons coming to the market for a more stable price. Next up here we've got the Caracal, currently trading at 11.8 million, and it's trying to stay there. Honestly, first half of the 6-month chart above that, second half below that, trading on an average of 11.8. It's a bit higher than average, but still well within acceptable ranges, and in fact more supply has been coming in here, trading at 11.7 million. So this is going to go down just a little bit, getting back to a more healthy 11.6 million maybe on average. I think that would be just about right. So it's looking all right. The Caracal may look like some swings here, but keep in mind this is between 11.2 and 12.2 million, so less than 10% swing on the Caracal from the very top to the very low in 6 months is actually quite all right, and it's good to see more supply coming in the last 24 hours, despite a bit of pressure on the price and decent availability for the ship in general. Next up here we get the Dominics. When it comes to availability, that looks pretty healthy as well. Supply in the last 24 hours, still about 15, 16 of them coming in here, so that's not bad either. And the price, it is because we went up to 210 million, so we're working our way back down towards 205. 200 to 205 as an average in general looks to be quite alright. So again, decent availability. This 195 to 210 million is just 15 million swing as the biggest swing in the last 6 months. So it is looking like some of these are finally stabilizing indeed. And yeah, this chart again, it's less than 10% volatility on the biggest ranges, which is quite all right. Finally, we're seeing some more ships coming on the market. Keep in mind also the Dominics is a battleship. It is of course a very versatile battleship because it uses drones, and as a result it's probably a bit more popular than, let's say, the Armageddon or some of the other ones, because it's a great PvE ship. Next up here we've got the Drake. The chart here, a little bit of volatility, swinging up to 57 million on a few occasions, but coming back down now below 54 million. So again, let's take a look at the trade range here. 53 well, we should take 59, but if we take the other ones 57, that's around 4 million, less than 10% again. And finally, availability of drakes is coming back. Look at that. This is pretty nice to have a big list of drakes, a lot of price ranges that will be defended, and to still have a few new orders, including 27 drakes coming in. So it's looking good for more and more stability in the Tech 1 market. Next up here we've got the Mauler, also dropping below 12 million. I mean, a bit of volatility at the tail end, but if we're trading in the 11 to 12 million trade range, that looks pretty damn good. And there's just not that many of them at the moment, so I think you could basically increase the price to almost 13 million by buying just 30 of them or something like that. That's definitely not a lot. So the Mauler, there's just not enough of them to keep the price very stable. It's an exception, right? Sometimes there are still markets that are basically empty or almost empty of these ships that are very susceptible to sudden spikes due to someone deciding, all right, I'm gonna take a bit of a gamble, buying out the Maulers, relisting them, and hope that it doesn't drop too quickly. But I think, like especially the Mauler here, it could be plucked very quickly. So at any moment, if this does happen, let's say that we see an increase in price to 13 million, it's going to be very interesting to make Maulers, and considering the availability of all of the other ships in general, this could be plucked quite quickly, bring in enough volume, and really start the stabilization of the Mauler as well. Next up here we've got the Myrmidon. Yeah, we went up to another price spike, but as expected, this one was finally pushed back. So a double increase in price here is not very good, but we did break the trend here by going as low as 51 million. So pretty obvious that the market needed to wait it out a little bit. Then we went up to the average, let's say 55 million, then an uptick to what was that? 59 million. So this is obviously a pretty big trade range. 10 million on this is more than 10%. Quite some volatility in the Myrmidon here, but we're finally coming back down due to quite a few orders here, 50 of them or something coming in towards 56.5 million. So the Myrmidon, yeah, I would say that this one has been quite a bit more violent in the last 6 weeks. The only good thing is that we now have slightly more than a page of Myrmidons, but I don't think it's enough to guarantee any real stability in this market just yet. We need to see constant flow of Myrmidons coming in every day to keep the trade range around 55 million. So this means that I think the Myrmidon is potentially a pretty good one to keep an eye on if you want to produce them and make a bit of extra money, have a bit more potential than the other ones. So I thought that maybe the dip below the average of 55 million down towards 51 million could have been a start of actually having enough supply coming in constantly to keep it in this range closer to 55 million. That just didn't happen. We jumped way up towards 59 again. That means that an 8 million difference between the top and the bottom in about a month. It's a lot more than 10%, so that is clearly, in my book, some volatility still in the Myrmidon market. We'd need probably double them, double the amounts, maybe even more than that, to get some more stability in the Myrmidon market here. So this, I would see that as an opportunity if you have a good Myrmidon blueprint. Next up here we've got the Oracle. That's looking a lot better, 80 to 90 million trade range. It's quite okay for this battlecruiser, which has known quite a bit of volatility. It's clear that we've been trading around the 85 million mark for quite a bit. At the moment we are heading for another high point because we're pretty much empty of them. So I would say if the Oracle is probably a much better production for in the upcoming days than the Myrmidon, which is actually going down on the chart. But yeah, Oracle's selling at just below 97 million at the moment on the sell order side. That's right here on the chart. So that's obviously pretty good, and this is of course the danger, is when you don't have the necessary volumes to keep the price in check, then we could get in to some serious price hikes all of a sudden. Now it tends to be squashed pretty quickly, but we're not seeing 50, 60 oracles being brought all of a sudden to try and bring some stability here. So it really depends on the ship in the Tech 1 market at the moment, if it's a stable market that you're looking for. But the Oracle apparently is at the moment a great opportunity. If you have an Oracle blueprint, you can probably make some real money on trying to sell them at the moment. Next up here we get the Raven. Going down slightly at the tail end, 192 million. That's probably a decent average. So 191 for the sellers, 184 for the buyers. Really good availability on this one. Just look at the amount that we're seeing on the market here. So that should allow the Raven to stay in a more stable trade range. We can see the decrease in volatility in the last 3 months or so. Let's hope that it can keep up with that, and yeah, the Raven stays pretty stable at this price range. I would love to see that. Next up here we get a Stabber. Also maybe a quick note here, the Raven, just like the Dominic's, very popular PvE ship. The missile system is definitely a great weapon system for PvE as well, which is of course an explanation as to why there are a lot of Ravens available compared to something like the Armageddon, which is not exactly known as a PvE ship but rather a PvP ship. Next up, the Stabber here, ooh, that's interesting. So the usual trade range, probably 10.5 to 11 million, something like that. We had some volatility here that kept declining. We went back towards 11 million, slight spike up, but now apparently there was a bit of an over response from supply, bit of volume pushing the price back up here. So currently Stabbers, the good news is a pretty recent order here, bring another 109 Stabbers here is gonna help keep this increasing price from going out of control. But yeah, we actually had an opportunity to buy them close to 10 million, which we've not seen in the last 6 months, and probably before that as well. So this again is, sometimes you're starting to see this mechanic come in again, where a ship increases in price and becomes pretty profitable to produce, but a bit too much is produced, and then we go down in price below the averages that we've seen in the last 6 months, and then as a result, yeah, strangely enough, a bit of volatility tends to happen. So someone tends to maybe buy them out or something, which is to me a little bit strange, but that seems to be a pattern, and I did not expect that. I thought if we would break the average on the downtrend, because, well, increased volumes, all of a sudden people willing to bring more Stabbers to the market and willing to sell them at a lower price, when we would go up, I would expect that we would stick around the average of before, but we're just shooting past those. We're emptying out these markets all of a sudden, and thus we're increasing the volatility after that happens. So that's a bit weird, but that seems to be the trend here. Next up, we've got the Tornado. Also here a price spike. We went down again, and currently we're trading at around the 72 million trade range. 74 is the average though. So if you're looking for that pattern, these are selling just above 74 million, and the buyers are at 71.60. If you would have looked for that pattern, this decline would need to go down, shoot through the 70 million price range because of oversupply, and then we would probably see some more volatility for some reason. But here in the Tornado, we actually settled just below 74 million, pretty much on the average that you would expect, and as a result it looks like this one is actually managing to maintain stable. The weird thing is we have not seen new Tornadoes come in the last 3 days, and despite that we're still managing a pretty average price. So yeah, 74.5 million, quite a few sell orders all of a sudden here, so that is obviously helping, but yeah, the people that bring these ships to the market, that make these ships, are getting a bit more in tune with the market. They're seeing, well, the Tornado is actually pretty low in price, there's quite a few of them, we're just not making them, we're just not bringing them to the market, we're actually going to wait for this one to increase in price again above its average before we're bringing in new supply. It is possible that this is because, well, they're more aware of it. It's also possible that there's just not that much potential of industry at the moment, and that people are basically looking for the right chips to produce, which right now would of course be something like an Oracle and not Tornadoes. So those are two possibilities. I think it's pretty interesting to see all of this in general. Next up here we've got the Typhoon. That looks quite okay. 185 million as an average, I think, over the last 6 months. Not too volatile either. A bit of spiky behavior here, but nothing too drastic, and we're currently actually slowly going down below the average here, so that should mean not too much new supply. Well, still 60 of them coming in at 181 million. That's a bit of a surprise. This could actually cause an even further decrease in price. Will that be the start of more volatility? We'll see. But yeah, Typhoon's pretty cheap at the moment. And finally, we've got the Vexor then, which just came off of a really big spike after a very stable period just below 12 million. And here it happened, but only just. So the counter response was bring a lot of supply. We actually went below 11.5 million on the charts, but it's not completely out of line. Still, we see the response after that is an increase towards 12.5 million, which they're selling at the moment. So that volatility is not over yet. And yeah, as a result here, people are waiting for the Vexor to jump back up a little bit more before bringing new ones to the market, because it's only 4 of them in the last 24 hours. Then we've got 1 order at 86 days, and then the rest of them are way more expensive, way more old. And yeah, that is obviously been a big buyout right here. 2 volume spikes here, big buyout causing that increase in price. This may have been a bit of a preparation, right? Buy up quite a few of the very cheap ones before it drops too low. Then big volume spike, big increase in price, volatility is back. Thus the Vexor market is ripe for some speculation, for trying to bring the Vexors at the right price and all of that good stuff. I think 12.5 million is probably a pretty decent price for a Vexor, not as good as what you're getting for an Oracle. So is it people that spot these opportunities and that understand that they have to hold off but have the potential, or is it that there's just not enough being produced to bring the entire Tech 1 spectrum into stability? I think both of those are possible. I'd love to hear your opinion, of course. Next up, we've got the Tech 2 market, 3120. 3120 sounds good. Let's see if we can spot some buy opportunities. Unfortunately for the Basilisk, that's not happening just yet. The volatility here is from 190 to 205 million. That's less than 10%. I don't think that these are actually trade-worthy variations. So it is looking like the Basilisk is finding a trade range, but I would love to see the bottom closer to 180, 185 for the buy orders, which are currently going for 200 million before I say, okay, this is obviously going to be an investment that should yield good results. So here at the moment, I would not make a move. Here's the Cerberus, very similar, trading in the 200 million range, actually a pretty high range at the moment. The spikes here are only from 200 to 215 million, again, less than 10%. I don't think that these are worth the gamble. There are bound to be bottom prices where you can actually put up some buy orders and be more certain of having a decent return. Next up here, we've got the Guardian finally going down after reaching 160 million. Let's see where the buyers are at. 140 million all of a sudden. That's right here on the chart. Still probably just a little bit too high. I mean, if it goes back up to like 150 million and then 55 million, then it's still just 10%. I would say wait a little bit longer. If you're seeing the buy orders drop with just a few more towards 138 and 35, that starts to be way more interesting. So the Guardian, I think it has potential to actually do that. Keep an eye on this one, but I wouldn't make my move just yet on buying these. Next up here, we've got the Hound. That one is finally, after that big volatility, let's say almost 2 months of sell opportunities, is finally stabilizing and slowly going down below the 19 million mark. The buyers are at 18.2 million. Yeah, touch too high, but for the longer term it could be all right to start slowly buying up a couple of Hounds here at 18 million. If you can sell them for 22 million, something like that, which I mean is just the first spike here and definitely possible, then we're talking a decent profit all of a sudden. 4 million on this is around 20% profit easy, so that's definitely not bad. This is something you could I think consider in small volumes. You don't want to increase the demand by too much, thus creating a floor that you actually don't want, but it's something you could definitely consider. Next up, the Ishtar, obviously trading at too high a range. If you still have some lying around, I would try to sell these at the moment and wait for a buy opportunity. Just look at its chart, it's like, no, okay, we're not gonna buy any Ishtars at the moment. Next up here, we've got the Manticore, also coming off of a high of almost 31 million. That's pretty crazy. going down to 23. So here again, this variation is obviously only 1 million. That's nothing to write home about. Now we need to allow the market to settle down a little bit. If you can buy them below 22 million, almost there, then you're probably doing a good deal. But some people again here are willing to purchase these, hoping for probably 27 million, something like that is definitely in the books considering these spikes. So it could be good. I would say probably just a bit too early. Next up here we get the Nemesis. Very similar. After the volatility comes the decline, trying to find price ranges, settling just above 20 million. The buyers though almost 19 million. That's definitely a bit too high for me. Honestly, the Hound is looking a lot better when it comes to the buy orders already. So I would say no on the Nemesis. Wait that one out a little bit longer. Next up here we get the Oneros. This is of course the absolutely best chart that I can show you for trade opportunities. You could have bought them at 140 or 145 million, 1, 2, 3, and now for a fourth time you can buy them at this price range, and the sell opportunities were at 175 of them, and there were 4 of them in the last 6 months. This is potentially a lot of money that you're making. We're talking 30 million on 140 million investment. Definitely not bad, way more than 10%. And you could have made that trade 4 times in the last 6 months. Not bad at all. Currently the buyers are at 149 million, so a little bit too high still for comfort, but you could consider this, or you could wait just a little bit longer, wait for a bit of volatility here to be in a lower range, and then try and buy them. But this is a great chart if you're looking for actually making some trades here. Next up, we've got the Purifier, also finally coming down towards 19 million. Buyers are at 18 million. This is starting to be pretty interesting. 18 million is definitely not bad. So I would say Purifiers and Hounds could be okay to start investing in. Of course, you have to wait for the volatility to show up once again, which can be a bit of a longer gamble in these stealth bombers. Next up here, we've got the Scimitar. Which unfortunately is already pushing back up at the 145 million mark. Obviously a bottom of 120 is quite exceptional, but buy orders of 135 to 130 million I think should be possible to look for, and they're currently buying for 142, only 5 million, 5.5 million margin between the buyers and the sellers. I would say it's too early. I think the Scimitar has room to go lower. And then finally here, the Vengeance. I'm still checking out one assault frigate, but this one is settling at 22.5 million. It's pretty obvious that I would not want to buy these, and it's pretty obvious that the spikes here, except for just one early on in October, they're just not happening at the same speed as the stealth bombers or some of these logistics cruisers here. And so I still don't like the assault frigates as trade opportunities. In my book, I don't risk that, but I keep an eye on them. You never know. Something like a Tech 3 cruiser rebalance, a bit of a nerf on those, could bring these ships back in the interest, and that could be very interesting. That is one scenario that I do think you should keep in mind, and it is one of the reasons, probably the main reason, why I still check the Vengeance, because on an announcement like that, these markets could go pretty crazy. Basically, the job of the assault frigates has been taken over by something much better, much more powerful, and only costing around double the ISK, which is of course the tactical destroyers. So yeah, let's jump in on that actually. Let's take a look at the Tech 3 market next here. Let's say 38.35. And last week we pretty much had availability across the board. All of them were settling down quite nicely. So let's see if that continues here for the Confessor. Yes, heading towards 50 million. And we still have, oh my god, a front page of new Confessors coming in here. That's quite a bit of them in the last 24 hours. Yeah, they're trading down, so huge availability here at the moment. Just look at the amounts, looks pretty nice, pretty healthy, and still some pressure on the price as a result. Let's see what the Hecate is doing. Very similar, heading towards 50 million, and again, full front page of new Hecates coming in here, 140 of them. Yeah, availability absolutely crazy availability compared to 3-4 months ago when we had a lot of that volatility. That's quite surprising. Here we get the jackdaw, very similar, in fact breaking 50 million on the chart already. Let's take a look at sell orders. We still have half a front page of new sell orders, including 13, 20, 35, 15, 22, so quite a bit of them. Below 50 million already. Availability in general pretty damn high, not as high as the previous two, but we are also of course stocking the one that is already below 50 million. So the Zwipel next here, very similar chart heading towards 50 million. Sell orders have a front page, but 71, 46, 28, 62, that's quite a few of them coming in here. Availability, pretty good here. I still see 161 of them here on the market. So tactical destroyers, all of them going down in price, but huge availability compared to 6 months ago, 5 months ago, when we were almost empty of these ships. Is the tech tree production back? It certainly looks like it. And that does mean that you could potentially look for a great buy opportunity to pick up some of these tactical destroyers on the cheap. They are great PvP ships at the moment. Of course, keep one thing in mind. You never know when they get nerfed into the ground. If you look at the availability that's happening here all of a sudden, has someone leaked something within the tech tree community that they know is coming? There's just the slightest hint of that, but I don't really know. Of course, that's pure speculation in my book, or from me. Of course, I'm not pointing any fingers for sure. We've seen the tech tree being an industry that produces way more than is demanded. The tactical destroyers did change that, but are we back in that scenario? That's hard to say at the moment. So let's take a look at the cruisers here. The Legion also going below 180 million, so a bit of pressure on that. Let's take a look at availability. Surprisingly enough, here again, half a front page of new sellers, including 26, 7, 11, 11, 11 of them. So that's quite a few Legions coming on the market, despite the fact that we're now trading at 175.7 million. And availability is looking pretty decent as well. Not super great, but quite decent. So let's take a look at the Loki here. Very similar chart again, going below 170 million in fact. And despite that, half a front page of new of them. Lower in volume, but still seeing 16, 6, 6, 8, 4, 7 here. It's quite a few of them that are still coming in here. Availability, again, I would say average, because a lot of them are small in volumes, but the fact that we're still seeing them coming in here, being sold here, despite the pretty low prices at the moment, is a bit surprising. If you thought that before, it was an indication that tech tree production just couldn't keep up, had to fill in gaps depending on what was being bought out, then this is clearly an indication that that was not exactly the case. Here finally we have the Proteus as well, going below 170 million. Clear pressure on the price. Availability of the Proteus, I would say pretty decent, definitely more than the previous ones, and not that many coming in though, just 2 new sell orders coming in here at 167 million. This should keep the price from really going a lot lower, but yeah, buying a Proteus for less than 170 million straight off the market, that's something that we've not really been able to do that often in the last few months. So there you go. Decent availability here again as well. And then finally we get the Tengu here, very similar chart, dropping below 170 million. New sell orders, only 4 of them, not that big in volume. We still have 28 of them here. So again, the sell orders are there, but they're much lower in volume, but they are quite available. You're able to pick up tech tree cruisers below 170 million. That's pretty damn unusual, considering what we've seen in the last 6 months or so, but pretty interesting for people, of course, that want to fly these ships. And across the board, I'm seeing really big supply and production happening in the tech tree market, which is pretty interesting. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see what happens next. And then next up here for the extra material, 4410. I'm going to try and do an analysis that was requested. Take a look at some of the ores compared to their minerals. So I think that the most obvious one would be something like Feldspar. So let's quickly start here with the titanium chart. You can see decently high over the last 6 months here and decently stable around 6.2 to 6.3 ISK. Let's see what the materials, raw materials, ores. Let's see what the feldspar market is looking like. We'll start with the base one here. Yeah, that actually looks like a pretty decent mirror here. Increase in price, stable at around 18.5 ISK. And just, yeah, very similar to the titanium chart. Here is dense feldspar, again, the increase and then the stability. Slightly up here at the tail end, but nothing that really jumps out here as something that would cause a differentiation between the two. Maybe it was expected that Citadel could cause something like that, or the compression market or something like that, but that's just not happening. Here is compressed feldspar, again increase in price, and then 2100, bit of a dip here temporarily, but nothing too drastic. Then here compressed dense feldspar, which is probably the hardest to make, honestly. Because dense feldspar you don't see that too often. Then you have to compress it, so you need big volumes of that. You need some patience. I think this is why you're seeing slightly more volatility on the decrease right here, which did happen in the compressed market, but here again compressed feldspar actually at a 6-month high, but it's not that drastic. So that's pretty interesting. But yeah, feldspar I would say pretty much mirroring the titanium market. Next up I could touch on pyrite, which is, well, low for the 6 months but stable at the tail end. I would say slight decline, slow decline over 6 months and then stable at the tail end here. And I think that scordite is definitely a pretty good source for that. So let's take a look at that. Scordite actually starting at 27.5, ending at 27 ISK, so a bit more stable than the pyrite. Of course, the fact that also titanium is being produced here is probably going to help with that stability. Massive scordite, well, starting at 29.5, ending at 30 ISK here. Again, this is not something where you could say that there is a big change, something that has drastically been different all of a sudden. This is pretty stable market actually over the last 6 months, which I think is normal considering that it has both titanium at a high point and so I think you can see that here, and pyrite, which is actually at a low point. So yeah, I'm not seeing anything too drastic here. Plagioclase maybe, we know that that combines Mixalon as well, which is pretty high but has just had a bit of a slow decline, decently stable actually, Mixalon. So let's take a look at these maybe. Here's the base one. Look at that, 65 is just basically an average, a bit of volatility at the beginning, but after that slightly below, just below that, really 60 to 65. There's nothing too drastic except one dip to really note here. Let's take a look maybe at the rich one. Obviously a bit more rare, a bit more valuable, so slightly more volatile, but in general I don't see anything too important here. Yeah, we do have a big increase in price here from 58 to 76, which is actually very similar to the increase in price that we're seeing early on here in Mixalon, but after that you've got this slow decline and then at the tail end a bit of an increase in price once again. So if we go for Azure Plagioclase, again you've got the increase in price, slow decline, slight increase in price at the tail end. So honestly the correlation between ores and minerals seems to be very close to me here. I don't see anything that indicates that this is going to change anytime soon. And if we take a look at the compressed ones, of course they are sometimes a bit more jaggedy, a bit more volatile, because, well, it's an extra step to take. A lot of people just don't take it. They either refine or sell their ores or something like that, but I'm not seeing anything that is completely out of line either here. So yeah, that was a request. It could be interesting, but honestly I think that the availability of reprocessing compression is just becoming easier to attain because you'll be able to do that in any medium, so the smallest one, medium citadel as well, for a pretty cheap price, I think, and it will be possibly opened up in these medium citadels as well. And honestly, I think that it's already extremely available to do reprocessing, to do compression at the moment. Only increasing the availability shouldn't change the dynamics between the ores, the minerals, and the compressed ores. What it may do is in fact take away some volatility in the compressed market, because the reprocessing unit should also allow compression as well. And if it's an easy comparison to make, then people may compress a little bit more whenever it's more profitable to do so, and as a result decreasing that volatility. That would be my expectation, but other than that, again, very strong correlation between the ores and the minerals, which honestly is to be expected, and I see no reason for this to change anytime soon. So there you go. That was actually a request to do a bit of a comparison between ores and minerals. Happy to do so. If you have any other suggestions, as always, feel free to post those in the comments as well. For now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.